Hi guys, good afternoon. So this video will be in this video we will be covering the practical discussion on the formation of partnership. So as I have already delivered to you, I have created a partnership nature information guide. I'll be uploading that one as well in your classroom. I hope you have read that already. So just for a brief recap on what was the content of that notes, let us scan through the document. So here we are. So the document covers the partnership definition, this one. And then here, as you can see, partnerships can be formed either orally or through a written contract. But there are instances wherein partnership agreements should be in a written contract for it to be valid. So here we have two cases: when the partnership's capital is 3,000 pesos or more, or when an immovable or real property is contributed by a partner. Also written here are the minimum contents of the articles of co-partnership, which is the written partnership agreement. We also have here, I have already also indicated here, about 8 characteristics of a partnership, 4 advantages of a partnership in comparison to corporations and sole proprietorships, another 4 disadvantages in comparison to corporations and sole proprietorships. I have also indicated here the classification of partnerships as to taxation, as to object, and as to the liability of the partners. Um, I have also indicated here 12 different classification of partners, and the capital accounts present in a partnership. So in comparison to sole proprietorship, wherein there's only one capital account and one drawing account, in partnerships, the number of capital accounts and drawing accounts should mirror the number of partners within the partnership. So after that, don't worry, because as to the sharing of profits, we will be discussing that in the next video. Now we go to partnership formation, wherein there are 3 possible different contributions that can be contributed by a partner. We have cash, non-cash asset, service, or industry. So if you would go back to your to the definition of partnership, so they contribute there either money, property, or industry. So money, cash; property, so your non-cash assets; and your industry or service, or the it involves the skills or the knowledge of a partner that is willing to contribute to the partnership. So for the formation of partnerships, no, there are a lot of possible scenarios, but I have presented here about 5 scenarios. The first one would be um, when 2 individuals new to the business would form a partnership. Second one is when a sole proprietor and an individual would form a partnership and they would be utilizing a new partnership books. The third one would be similar with the second situation. The only difference is that um, the partners will be utilizing the books of the sole proprietor. And then the fourth and the fifth one is that when 2 or more sole proprietors would form a partnership, and the scenarios would be either they will be utilizing new partnership books, or they will be utilizing the books of the existing books of one of the sole proprietors, and the rest of the sole proprietors will be closing their books. So for now, we will be discussing the how 2 individuals would form a partnership. So let's start with this example. So we will still be using the same example. I'll be just guiding you through the document on how these things were journalized. Okay. So let's start with the first situation. So let's move to the Excel, so that I'd be able to show you the calculations that have been done herein. Okay, so I'll stop sharing this window and I'll transfer to presenting the Excel file. Okay. So I hope the Excel file is now visible. So let's copy muna the problem that was presented on our Word document on the notes that I have created. Okay. So this is the first scenarios wherein all partners are new to the business. So Tyne and Sarawat are individuals who have no existing businesses. They decided to form a partnership by contributing the following. So if you normally, the normal contributions of partners would usually be um, just, you know, cash if they're new to the business. But I have shown you a lot of different accounts contributed here because I want to introduce to you already the house on uh, computing the amounts that will be recorded in the partnership books. Okay, so as you have I hope that you have already read your notes, but there in your notes it was indicated that for cash, yes, for cash, there's no problem there. We record cash at face value. So cash is at face value because there's no difficulty in determining kung unsa na ang value sa cash because kung unsa ang iyahang nawong kung pila ang iyang amount mo gyud to siya imong i-record nga amount pod sa imong pag-form sa partnership. Now for your accounts receivable naman, for the rest of for the rest of the items here, it will be recorded based on the partnership agreement. So for the non-cash property or non-cash assets, valuation is in hierarchy. So first is based on agreement. If there is no agreement or if the agreement is absent, then we go to your fair value or your market value. And after that, kung absent gyapon ang duha, then we go to the book value. Book value is the carrying amount of the asset. Carrying amount. Okay? So book value is kung pila ang amount nga na record nimo currently. Okay? Or after adjustments nga not based on agreement. Okay? So for service naman or for industry, we record industry through a memorandum entry. Now, for your non-cash assets, we have peculiarities, no? Actually, ang medyo peculiar lang yun as to valuation is, patante lang for accounts receivable, and allowance for doubtful accounts. So for this two, when recording a contributed accounts receivable, you will not offset kumbaga the balance of your allowance for doubtful accounts. So both the accounts receivable and the allowance for doubtful accounts will be recorded at gross amounts. So gross accounts receivable and then gross allowance for doubtful accounts, not accounts receivable net of allowance for doubtful accounts. Okay? Now for your inventory naman, for inventory, sometimes what is given is not the fair market value or the fair value or the market value, but what's given is the net realizable value. Okay, so if that's the what given, even if given ang kaning, even guys, even if given ang fair market value or ang net realizable, pero kung naaga po yung existing agreement, i-ignore ni mo ang fair value or ang katong net realizable value. Okay, now for your for your property, plant, and equipment. So be it land, building, equipment, machinery. Okay, so property, plant, and equipment. Well, we will not have any problem naman with land kaya wala man siya accumulated depreciation. But for other PPEs, so and accumulated depreciation. So for this accounts naman, in kanang tawag nito, in comparison to the accounts receivable and allowance for doubtful accounts nga gina-record nimo sila at gross values. For PPE naman an accumulated depreciation, you have to record this one net at net amount. Okay, so if you record an equipment, a contributed equipment, it should be net of the related accumulated depreciation. So once an equipment is contributed, will be deducted first before it can be carried forward to the partnership books. Okay, so with that in mind, let's go to our example na. So let me just move this muna here para we can utilize naman this part of ano. Okay. So for our so Thai and Sarat are individuals who have no existing businesses. Let's see. So we have here our partnership agreements. Okay. So this is the partnership agreement, no? The partners agree to the following. Okay. Did I use 12,000 here? Was it 12,000? Okay. Okay. Sige. Okay. So with that is first, what I usually do is this one. I copy the old table. So this is, I copy the table given in the problem, no? And then I label the first two columns as old values. This way, we can actually determine kung this is the values nga katong based on their own records or based on like initial values. And then, we copy this one. But instead of old values, we change this to new values. So the new values could either be based on the partnership agreement, or the fair value or market value, or the book value depending on kung kinsaan naa. Okay? So, no problem with that. Let's just remove muna the peso sign kay para we can sum it up later on. So 50,000 and 30,000. Again, cash is measured at face value. Now, for accounts receivable naman is based, again, cash, accounts receivable, inventory, land, equipment are non-cash assets. So once they are contributed, they should be valued based on the hierarchy of um, partnership agreement, fair value or market value or net realizable value, and then we have the last one, which is the book value. So for your accounts receivable, it's said here that 10,000 of times accounts receivable is uncollectible. So when the term here used is doubtful pa lang, so meaning you will not write it off. But once the term used is uncollectible na, you will write it off by reducing the amount of your accounts receivable na. So 10,000 of 10 accounts receivable is uncollectible naman. So meaning our new gross, again gross amount of our accounts receivable is 70,000, and then we less 10,000 na uncollectible. So our new gross accounts receivable for time is 60,000, and the allowance for total account shall be reduced to 5,000. Okay, so nahimo siyang 5,000. So, it doesn't mean guys ha nga nahimo siyang 5,000 because nag-write off tag 10,000. It could be the reason because when you write off naman your receivable, 'di ba? Your entry for writing off receivable is debit to allowance because the normal balance of your allowance for doubtful accounts, normal balance mo naman nito is a credit, 'di ba? So in reducing it, you have to debit it. So amounted to 10,000, and then you credit your accounts receivable. And then 10,000. So muna siyang basta makaingon mo nga that was the reason why from 15,000 the allowance for doubtful accounts became 5,000. Okay? So it could be the reason, but it's not necessarily the reason. Okay? So let's go to Sarawat. So while Sarawat's allowance for doubtful accounts shall be increased to 12,000. So with that, no, walay giingon nga agreed value for your allowance for your accounts receivable on Sarawat's case. So wala man pud siya fair value nga gihatag. So we go directly to the carrying amount or the book value of your accounts receivable, the gross amount of 30,000. While for your allowance for doubtful accounts, so the partners agreed that the allowance should be increased to 12,000. Okay. So in this guys, do not mind this one. I was just showing you kung saan kanang entry in writing of accounts receivable. But like don't mind this one because at this point wala patay journal entries nga buhaton because as the case as the problem indicated, both partners were fresh to the businesses. Okay, they are fresh faces, so they don't have any existing books yet. When we say books, we have our general journal, our subsidy, our ledgers, be it the general ledger or our subsidiary ledgers. You know, so for journals naman, we have our special journals or the cash journal, cash disbursement, cash receipts journals, depending on what books the current business has. But since Tyne and Sarawat are new to the business, that is why they don't have existing books yet. So no entries will be made yet. Okay? So for our inventories naman, inventory of Tyne and Sarawat shall be valued at their fair value at 85,000 and 80,000 respectively. So in this case, the agreed value and the fair value of inventories are equal. Okay? So we value them again. For Tyne is 85,000 and then for Sarawat it's 80,000. Oh my god, I'm so sorry. And then we go to walay giingon nga any agreement as to how land should be valued. So we go directly to the carrying amount or the book value of 200,000. And for the equipment naman, the equipment is to be valued at 120,000. So no problem there. You just simply write 120,000 on the value of the equipment. And as I have said a while ago, no, when equipment is contributed, your accumulated depreciation should be reduced to zero. So basin manggod no, what you will do is there are instances manggod nga when there is a possibility that instead of recording 120,000 here, you will instead record 150,000 gross value and then uh, provide an accumulated depreciation of 30,000. So this would be okay if the asset contributed is the accounts receivable, but like if the asset contributed is your equipment, then this valuation is a no because again we have to reduce the balance of our accumulated depreciation to zero, and we uh, assign the whole new value of your equipment to the equipment account itself. So after after what do you call this one, after computing no our new set of values, we can now determine the total of each have 80,000 for your accounts receivable, 90,000 for your allowance for doubtful accounts, 70,000 for your inventory is 165,000, for the land is 200,000, and for equipment 120,000. And again, accumulated depreciation is at zero. For your amount naman of contributed amount for the contributed capital naman of each partner, no? So we sum up of all times contribution totaling to 320,000 and Sarawat's contributions totaling to 352,000. Oh my god, this is not the case. I forgot. Okay. So okay. So in this case naman kasi, so to be safe na lang no, let's just assign allowance for doubtful accounts a negative value. Why? Because this is a contra asset account. So when we say contra asset, it is part of the asset na portion, but the normal balance is credit. So same here. Okay. Okay, so the total contributed capital of Time is 310,000, while for Sarawat is 328,000. So let's check if our total is, if the amounts are correct by totaling this one and then totaling the total contributed capital of each partner. So they're the same, so meaning our totals are. After that, we now go to our journalizing. So when it comes to journalizing these transactions, no, or after what do you call this one? After determining the total of each account, we can now move on to journalizing. So I'll introduce to you first. Well, I have already introduced to you in the notes the shortcut journalizing. So sige, ano lang. Let's let's journalize na lang muna using our what do you call this one, using the longer journalizing method. Okay, let's not wrap that one. Okay, so for time no, he contributed cash, accounts receivable, with an allowance for doubtful accounts. So allowance for doubtful accounts. So again, is the normal balance for this is credit. Okay, and then inventory, land, equipment. Okay, and then all of that, the net amount contributed will then be credited to time capital. So the amount of cash contributed amounted to 50,000 by time, 60,000 of accounts receivable with an allowance amounting to 12,000. Remove the negative na kasi nakaka-credit na naman na yan. And then for your inventory, the amount contributed is 85,000, 120,000 for. Okay. So Ryan didn't contribute land, so 120,000 for the equipment, and then kind capital of 310,000. Okay. And then if we go to Sarawat's contributions naman, so let's copy this. But we changed equipment to land because Sarawat did not contribute any land, but he contributed any equipment. Instead, he contributed the land, so equipment. Okay, and then the amount that Sarawat contributed for cash is 30,000. For the accounts receivable is 30,000 as well, with an allowance for doubtful accounts worth 12,000. And then for the inventory, Sarawat contributed 80,000, and for his land, the amount is 200,000, with a net amount of 328,000. So we can check naman the amount, no? So if you want, I can what do you call this one? Solve this using the entries, no? So total debit, so 50 plus 60 plus the 85 plus the 120, and then we less the 12,000. So the amount, why is it 303,000? What happened there? Hmm, let me see. Nga naman din. What happened here? Wait a minute. 50, 60, 85, 120. Bakit kasi 12,000? 5,000 lang to. Sorry, 5,000 lang to. 5,000 lang yung nakalagay dito. So, ayun, 5,000. And then, for Sarawat, bakit equipment capital to? My God, sorry. Sarawat capital. Okay. So, let's do the same. So, we add all of the debit side. And then, we deduct the one credit side. So, 328,000. Okay. Or actually, guys, you can do the shortcut naman na the shortcut journal entry, which is which would make this table very useful. So how do we do that? Okay, so okay, let's just copy this again. So alternatively, We could do it this way. Okay. For the cash, the total cash contributed is 80,000. 80,000. And then your accounts receivable is 90,000 with a total allowance of 17,000. And then we have here inventory of 165,000, 200,000 worth of land, and 120,000 worth of equipment. For time capital naman, that was 310,000, and for Sarawat, it was 328,000. So if you want to check naman the equality of your debits and credits, you can add all of the debits and then compare it to the sum or the total of all of the credits. So they're equal. Okay. So how do we determine whether or not sige, yan na lang to i-delete. How do we determine whether or not these two entries will result to the same entry here? Okay. So if you want, you can check it using your T accounts. Okay. So by posting the entries here. So we have cash. Okay. After cash, we have accounts receivable, allowance for doubtful accounts, inventory, land, equipment, and capital, Sarawat capital. Okay. So if you post these entries naman, no, so the first entry we have for cash, debit of 50,000, accounts receivable, debit of 60,000, and then inventory, debit of 85,000. Equipment, we have debit of 120,000. Allowance, we have a credit of 5,000, and time capital, a credit of 310,000. And then for the second entry, cash of 30,000, accounts receivable of 30,000, and then inventory of 80,000, land of 200,000, allowance of 12,000 credit, and then Sarawak capital, a credit of 328,000. Okay, so if we sum it all up, all of the entries in our trial balance, no? So okay, so 80,000 there for accounts receivable, for your cash 8,000, accounts receivable 90,000, inventory 165, land 200,000, equipment 200,000. For your allowance for doubtful accounts 17,000, and then time capital of 310,000, Sarawat capital 310,000. Okay. Okay. So if we compare it to this only one entry, no? So the only one entry here we have cash 80,000 daw, which totaled here 80,000 also. Accounts receivable equal to the total here. 165 of inventory equal here. 200,000 of land equal to here. 120,000 of equipment equal to our trial balance, so our T account, and then allowance of 17,000, and then time capital 310,000, Sarawat capital 328,000. Okay. Okay. So with that, we're done with the first scenario wherein all partners are new to the business. Now let's go to the second scenario. So for the second scenario, no, let's just ano na lang. Let's let's solve together na lang the second scenario when a sole proprietor and an individual would form a partnership. So there are two possible cases here where the first one where they would utilize the existing books of the sole proprietor. The second scenario will be the one where they will be creating a new set of books for the partnership. So for that, let's use this example. So Tyne is a sole proprietor of a business with the following records. So Tyne is forming a partnership. Okay, let's just cut this. Tyne is forming a partnership with Sarawat and together, both new to the business. Sarawat will contribute 415,000 cash, while together will contribute his industry. As per agreement, Tyne's assets are to be valued as follows. So here are the partnership agreement. Yeah. And then after that, it was said that no other adjustments were to be made. Okay. So with that, we now go to adjusting muna. So our first step when it comes to when a sole proprietor would form a partnership with either a sole proprietor or an individual is to adjust first the existing books of the sole proprietor. So we no longer have to we you actually you can also you can still um create the old values new values na table. So if we want that, sige, let's just do that na lang. Okay. This will be the old and this will be the new. Sorry. So cash still at 50,000. Accounts receivable is at what? Again, let's make it negative na lang for our later na lang. Accounts receivable is uncollectible, so meaning mo siyang 60. And allowance is 10,000. So negative 10,000. Inventory 85,000. Equipment is 120,000. Okay. So land, since wala man nag sa land would still be valid 200,000. And then again, accumulated depreciation should be a zero. Accounts payable is at 90,000. And then now the times capital would be oh. So we sum it up. Sorry. Oh, let me just do it this way. This one, and then we deduct this one. Because accounts payable has a credit balance. Okay. So 415,000 is the new balance of times capital. Okay. Okay. So with that, again, we cannot do the direct entry to the partnership because we still have to adjust first the books of time before we can proceed with opening the books of the partnership. So with that, we go directly to Times books. Times books. So, no, sabi niya, accounts receivable, 10,000 of accounts receivable is uncollectible. So, when your accounts receivable is uncollectible, you have to write off your accounts receivable. And to write off, you have to debit allowance for doubtful accounts. And you have to credit accounts receivable. No expense account will be used here because when you already entered the allowance for doubtful accounts, you have already entered the expense account, which is the doubtful accounts expense. Also, okay, so this is just simply kana bitang netting out in a sense your allowance for doubtful accounts and accounts receivable, removing from your allowance and your accounts receivable the amount that sure na ka na uncollectible because when you say allowance for doubtful accounts, doubtful pa siya. But this time on good, it is you are already certain that this amount is uncollectible, so we have to write it off. So write off. Write off. Okay. So in writing off your allowance for doubtful, you're in writing off your accounts receivable, debit allowance for doubtful accounts and credit accounts receivable, amounting to 10,000 pesos. And then, if you can see here, our existing balance of allowance for doubtful accounts is 15,000 at credit. So if we have reduced this amount by 10,000, the remaining balance of your allowance for doubtful accounts will now be at 5,000 pesos. So, since our required balance is at 10,000, because as indicated here, the allowance should be at 10,000, we have to increase our allowance by 5,000. So, to increase your allowance for doubtful accounts, so malamang you have to credit the allowance for doubtful accounts because you're increasing it, diba? So, let's just put here some hashtag na lang for the explanation. So, you have to increase your allowance for doubtful accounts. Eh. So the normal balance of your allowance for doubtful accounts is credit. So to increase it, you have to credit the allowance for doubtful accounts. Okay? So amounting to 5,000. Now the question is, diba, usually when we establish or when we increase our allowance for doubtful accounts, usually we use, diba, the doubtful accounts expense. Doubtful accounts expense. But take note, na at this point, we are already closing times business. So, wala na yung point nga mag-expense ka pa nga at the end of the day, imo ra gyapon siyang i-close sa imong capital. Tapos, dili naman nimo i-determine ba kung maka-income pa ba si Tan or whatever, kasi increase pa nimo ang capital because you're just going you're just going through the longer way. So, since this is simply adjusting the books of time, so any amount that will somehow give time an expense or an income, additional income, we directly adjust the capital account. Okay? So since this is this is an expense in a sense. This is an expense actually. So it will reduce capital. So capital is a normal balance of credit. So to reduce your capital, we have to do the opposite, which is debiting it. So we have to debit times capital to time capital amounting to the amount expense, which is 5,000. So we're done with the first adjustment. For the second adjustment naman, inventory shall be valued at their fair value at 85,000. Now, inventory is at 90,000, right? But the agreed value is only 85,000. So meaning we have to reduce inventory. So by reducing inventory, again, let's put some hashtag here. By reducing inventory, we have to credit it because the normal balance of inventory is debit. Normal balance, when we say normal balance, kung increase siya, ahaman iyahang ginaon sa man mo siya gina-debit or credit. So inventory is an asset. So when it increases debit siya, but since this one is a decrease, so we have to credit inventory. Okay? Amounting to what? 5,000 decrease. Okay, from 90 nahimo siyang 85. And then, so sir, unsa man ni siya ang ato ang kuan ani sir? Unsa man ni siya ang ato ang i tawag nito? Um itong i-debit lugar din ani sir. So 'di ba, kung kuan ni siya, normal lang ni siya nga reduction of inventory value. So your debit should have been loss on inventory loss or loss on inventory write down. Okay? And that is an expense account. But since again, we are just simply adjusting times capital in preparation for the partnership that is about to be formed, we directly adjust the capital. And that since that was an expense, now we directly adjust times capital. So time capital debit amounting to 5,000. And then we go to the third adjustment. So the equipment is to be valued at 120,000. So for the equipment, we can do it in two different ways, no? So first is we close the accumulated depreciation first, kaya diba again, we we have to reduce the balance of the accumulated depreciation to zero. So accumulated depreciation equipment. So, di ba, just like allowance for doubtful accounts, accumulated depreciation is a contra asset account. So it's part of the assets, but it has a credit normal balance. So contra asset account. So in order to make the balance to reduce the balance to zero, we have to debit it with the same amount na yung balance na 35,000. Ahama na to siya i-close or ahama na to siya ibangga. At tuada yung kuan si equipment. Okay, not the capital. We're just simply grabe tawag aturang inet na diretso kung ang kang equipment iyang depreciation kaya nga to ang ginakuha na lang is iyang net value or carrying value or iyang book value. So 35,000. Now, when we reduce equipment by 35,000, no? So mahimo siyang 150 is 35,000. So 115,000 na lang iyang value, but the agreed value should be at 120,000. So with that, we have to increase, right? We have to increase our equipment by 5,000. Okay. So with that, mag-entry na yung taog, hashtag, with that, we debit equipment because we are increasing its value or its gross value equipment amounting to 5,000. Okay. So usually if this is a revaluation of your equipment, which does not usually happen, no? Unless the business is a corporate, unless the business would prefer to use the revaluation model for equipment, wherein we will be recognizing revaluation surplus. Or for partnership naman, it's like a direct increase in your capital. So with that equipment, 5,000, and then again, it's more like it's since the increase ang value sa imong equipment is like marami tao kag nagka-income in a sense. So nagka-income in a sense. So again, when that's the scenario, we directly adjust our capital. So there is tag credit of time capital amounting to 5,000. But alternatively, we can do it this way. Para di bitaw kayo siya hago sa inyong kamot o sa inyong ballpen or kung mag-type mo or whatever. So alternatively, we can do a compound entry. Okay? So we know that your accumulated depreciation should be reduced to zero, right? Should be reduced to zero. So the amount is 35,000. And we know that the gross amount of your equipment should be at 120,000. So we reduce our equipment account by how much? 150 minus 120, 30,000. So equipment, 30,000. And then after that, ng difference na nila. The difference will then be will be adjusted to your capital. So ayun. So as you can see here, same yapon nga accumulated depreciation was debited for 35,000 while the equipment has a net credit. Net credit mo kaya naman kay credit na 35 tapos net of debit nga 5 so net credit of 30. So net credit of 30,000 and then kind capital has also a credit of 5,000. So whatever kanang method that you prefer, I'll consider that because it will still result to the same entries. Okay, so this is the first step. Now, let's go muna. I think this will be easier, no? So if we proceed directly to katusang books of sole proprietor used. Proprietor used. Okay. So when the books of the sole proprietor is used, no closing entry, No closing of times books. Thus, no need for closing entries. Okay. But if the case was new partnership books is to be open, no? So closing and times books needs to be closed first. Okay. So let's go muna to the shorter way. So since we will be using um times what do you call this one? Times books. Um we will just directly record the investments of Sarawat and Together. Now, if you can remember, Sarawat will be contributing 415,000 cash, while Together will contribute this industry. So for Sarawat's contribution, your entry should be cash, and then Sarawat Capital amounting to 415,000. There's no problem here as to valuation because again, we value cash at its face value. Now, medyo complicated, medyo malahi na rin kapag abot kang Together na contribution because Together's contribution is is industry. So for industry naman, no, only a memorandum entry is to be recorded. So when recording, Together's contribution, you simply have just narrate na Together is admitted to the partnership as an industrial partner with depende. So aman tong nakaingon di wala man siya. Okay. So wala man giingon diri no kung unsa ang contribution kung unsa na to ang pag-value ni Together. So let's just assume that with a one third interest. Oh, bigyan na lang to share that. To share one third in the partnership profits. Okay. But it doesn't necessarily mean na since tulo sila kabuk one third din kang Together. Depende na po na siya sa usually sa masabutan sa partners kung pila ang shares sa industrial partner, things like that. Okay? And you will also determine naman po na as to like partnership sharing of profits, especially when there is no existing agreement on saon din ang ilang sharing, that will be discussed in the second video to be uploaded sa ato ang partnership operations. So pag capitalist partner based on capital contribution, pag industrial partner based on katong equitable value of the industry given or the service given. Okay? Sige. Anyhow, so again, if the books of the existing proprietor, if the books of the existing sole proprietor is used, our entry will only consist of these things. Okay? But if a new partnership books will be opened, so in Times books yapon niya ang kaninga entry, but Times siyang Times books / partnership books. Kay ang books ni Time kay mahimo namang partnership books. But if the scenario is where tawag nito the partnership will books. A new set of books will be opened by the partnership. So we will still be tawag ani recording these entries, kani siya, kani siya, kani siya. And for the equipment, let's just use the shortcut, katong alternative na way, because this is a lot more convenient. So adjust gyapon nato, no? So first is we still have to adjust times books. Times books. And aside from adjusting his books, we have to close the books of time. Now, when we say closing the books of time, so times books yapon na siya. Tapos closing entries. Let's just label this one as adjusting entries. So when we say closing times books, we have to reduce the balance of every account present therein to zero. So first is we have to determine kung unsa ang credit accounts ni Time. So ang credit accounts ni Time, based on the adjusted values, no? We have Time capital accounts payable and allowance for doubtful accounts. So we do that. So we entry that here. So we debit allowance for doubtful accounts, allowance for doubtful accounts, and then accounts payable, and then time capital. And then we go to the assets nga sa atong accounts sa books ni Time nga naay debit balance, we have to credit them para ma-zero yung balance. So cash, accounts receivable, inventory, what else? Inventory, land. Okay. So to do this, no? So let's check pila itong allowance for doubtful accounts ni Ryan. It's 15,000 and then equals. So na siya 15,000 nga beginning and then nakuhaan ng 10,000, tama? And then nadungagan ng 5,000. So the new balance is 10,000 as agreed. Accounts payable, same at 90,000. Time capital, we don't know yet. Kasi, capital na po. Sige, time capital, originally it's 420. And then, nag-minus na ng 5 kay debit. Another 5 nga minus kay debit again. And then, narantay credit nga 5,000. So, nag-add ka ng 5,000. New time capital is 415,000. For your cash, the cash is the same. 50,000. Let's just remove the 50 pesos, the peso sign here. Or, yeah. And then for your accounts receivable naman, so that was 70,000, pero nakuhaan siya ng 10,000. Inventory, the amount was 90,000, tas nakuhaan siya ng, how much was that? 5,000. Land is at the same value. For your equipment naman, equipment is 150. Makaan siya ng 30. 120. And for your accumulated depreciation, hindi na siya mabutang because 35 nakuhaan ng 35 will be 0. So let's check the equality of our entries, no? Equal ba siya? So 15 daw, and then 515. Okay. So meaning our entries are balanced. Okay. So with that, after closing times books, by the way, so just to check, this one was used by solving here naman sa tong entry, no? But let's compare the balances here dito sa ato ang new values nga na-solve. So cash is 50, so 50, 60, 50, 60, allowance of 10. So 85, 200, 120. 85, 200, 120. And then the accumulated depreciation is 0. So no, wala tayo enter dito. And then 90, 415. 90, 415. So as you can as you can see, guys, no, our entries are equal. Okay, and it mirrors the values that were solved dito sa new values. Now, after closing tense books, we go to our partnership books. So, in our partnership books, we record the what do you call this one? The investment of time. So, this is very easy actually because you simply have to copy. You simply have to copy this one. Mura bitaw siya og imo lang siyang ikuan guys. Kung yung sa imong closing entry sa book ni time, imo lang din siyang ibali pag abot dito sa partnership books. Okay, so it's easy that way. And then ang entry dayon sa books ni ay sa for Sarawat's contribution and Together's contribution will still be the same. Okay, so but alternatively, so actually guys, no, before we go to the alternative solution, alternative nga journal entry for this for this set of entries. If you can see, ang madugang lang yun nga entry would be ang closing entry sa books ni Tyne o ang pag-record sa katong investment ni Tyne, which is siya ang sole proprietor. Okay, nga gi-close ang books tas kanang gibalhin tas nag-open na ng partnership books. So no, alternatively, just like what we did dito sa ato ang what do you call this one? Sa first ato nga scenario wherein Tan and Sarawat were new to the business and before they decided to form a partnership. Alternatively, we can create the entry. We can um record a compound entry. Compound entry wherein compound entry ni daan. We can combine these two entries, no? So simply we just simply add the cash balances. So cash of 50 plus 40 for 15. So 50,000 also 50,000 plus the 415. So the new cash balance is 465. Wala may lain inventory, land, equipment nga na contribute even na accounts receivable of allowance. So maintain na siya. And then naalang din tayo sa capital. Edugang here. So to check kung equal ang ato ang debits o credits, then we simply have to add all the debits, then the credits. Equal. And then, yapon, mag-entry lang pod yapon ka sa ang together nga iyahang contribute is iyahang industry. Okay? So, with that, we're done with if what do you call this one? Sole proprietor ang individual, tapos new partnership books, and then old partnership books. Now imagine no na kanang let's go to the third scenario nga two sole proprietors would form a partnership. So the steps will still be the same. So I will no longer be providing you a problem, but I will just kanang guide you through this. So butang tala nga Tyne and Sarawat form a partnership. Di lang it together. Butang tala Tyne and Sarawat form a partnership, and then Tyne and Sarawat are both sole proprietors. Okay? So in Tyne's books, we will do these adjustments, kumbaga. We will still record these adjustments in Tyne's books. And then on Sarawat's books, we'll also do adjustments if needed, if naam sa agreement. After doing the adjustments, for example, i-close ang book ni Tyne or ni Sarah and the new partnership book will be utilized. So, magbuhat closing entry sa books ni Tyne, magbuhat closing entry sa books ni Sarawat. After sa closing entry sa both books, mag-open din ato ding i-record ilang contributions sa partnership books. Okay? So, what if naman, sir, na ang nahitabo is ang books ni Tyne ang gamiton, ang Sarawat would be closed. So, ang adjusting entries will be recorded sa books ni Tyne and books po ni Sarawat, both cases. Pero for books ni Tyne, no closing entries will be recorded. Sa books ni Sarawat na ay closing entries. And then, wala na po yung recording sa investment ni Tyne. Pero na ay recording sa investment ni Sarawat. So, what I'm saying here is that if the if ang sole proprietor, if the existing sole proprietor books will be utilized, ang tag-iya sa libro nga gi-utilize kay tama na siya sa adjusting entries. His entries will stop there. And then madungangan lang din siya sa katong entries dayon ni katong partner nga na-close ang iyahang book. Okay? So with that, I think we're done with our discussion sa partnership formation. So I hope that you have learned something in this discussion, and I hope that I made things clear. If naa may kalibugan, do not hesitate to communicate with me or with Sir Ralph if Sir Ralph is the instructor in your class. And then also, by the way, let me just remind you also no katong akong last notes sa notes. Let me just stop sharing this one, and then let me share again the notes that I have prepared for you guys. So this one. So partnerships is based on mutual agreement. So the ability to give consent. So dapat at free will. So partnerships are contracts with intention to build a relationship. And a corporation is not capable of kanang deciding for himself, kumbaga ba, is not capable of having a relationship with another being. So muna siya nga, juridical persons or persons who have personalities by virtue of law cannot form a partnership with any type of persons. Because again, only natural persons can form a partnership. So in this illustration, so butang talang no nga, kung so partnership A, partnership B, pwede ba sila mag-form ng partnership? No. Pero kung naay tulo ka partner si A, naay duha ka partner si B, and then nag-form sila partnership as people. So not the partnerships combining, but the partners agreeing to form a partnerships among themselves. That would be possible. But if ang two partnerships, say partnership A or partnership B, mag-partnership, no, that's a no-no. Okay, so that covers everything no sa ato ang partnership nature information. Again, read the notes nga I gave to you, and I hope nga makahelp to siya. And again, if you have any questions, do not hesitate to communicate with us, your instructors, and prepare for your exam, both theory and problem solving. Okay, so that's it for this video, guys. Thank you so much for listening.